Hi, and welcome to Journey Forward with Jory Rose, where you will gain insights, tools, and inspiration to get unstuck and live your best life. Jory is a licensed marriage and family therapist with a passion for helping people cultivate awareness and authenticity so they can show up fully in all aspects of their life. And now, here's Jory.
Hey everyone, it's Jory Rose. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's podcast episode. There's a couple of different things I want to talk about, and at the very top of the list is the ways in which we've had to pivot and continue to find what resiliency looks like in the face of COVID. I don't know if you remember a couple weeks ago, if you listened to the episodes in order, but I was talking about some different ideas I was having to stay tuned for some different ways that you can be able to work with me. Well, even in the past few weeks since I originally recorded those episodes, I again have pivoted myself in the work that I'm doing and the ways in which I want to continue to show up to be a guide and a support system in how to journey forward, in how to get unstuck so we can be able to live our optimal lives in whatever which way that looks. And, one of the things that I continue to hear from family, from friends, from clients is not only the pandemic fatigue that we're all experiencing, but this idea of, I just can't wait until life goes back to normal. And I think in the beginning, it was really easy to believe that life was going to go back to normal. And the longer that this goes on, I think we continue to stay stuck and we increase our suffering and we continue to struggle with the constant comparison mind to the way things were. As we know in the foundation of mindfulness being rooted in Buddhist meditation practice, we know a couple of different things around how to reduce our own suffering. One of which is the more we stay stuck in rumination, the harder it is to be in the present. So that's to say, the more we hold on to the way things were and have the belief that they are always or were always supposed to be that way, that's the way things should be, the harder it is to accept what is. And in that foundation of Buddhist meditation practice, what the tools teach us is to have non-attachment to the outcome. Easier said than done. How can we have non-attachment to the outcome and the way that we live our lives? Well, the way that we have that non-attachment is by being present with what is. And what is what's happening right now. And so what I mean by all of this is right now is normal. It's not what we knew. It's not what we wanted. It's certainly not what we expected. And most of it is not what we like. But the more we stay stuck in the belief system of those four things, it's not what I wanted. It's not the way it was supposed to be. It's not the way it should be. I don't like this. Then the harder it is to be present with the way things are. And so I invite you to notice how often, or invite you to notice whenever your mind goes to that place of rumination, to that longing of, if I can just go back to the way things were, then I would be happy. Because if that's what you're holding on to for happiness, you might be waiting a while. Because it's my belief, and I think the belief of many people, life will never be the same again. So the more we count on it going back to something that was familiar, it's going to be really hard for us to ever be happy and present. So just, the first step, as I say, is always awareness. Awareness of our thoughts, awareness of noticing, oh, look at that. I'm holding on to the past again. Okay, I completely understand why I'm doing that. I can have self-compassion for the fact that that's what my mind is doing all on its own. Let me invite my mind back to the present moment. Let me tune into self-compassion, which is to say, this is really hard right now. Let me find something I'm grateful for in this moment. And I've been talking with so many clients who are struggling with such deep grief and depression with a sense of hopelessness and helplessness around this situation that sometimes even gratitude can be hard to tap into. So if you are experiencing that and gratitude is difficult to be able to connect with, I want you to remember this. You're always breathing. And as long as you're breathing, there's more right with you than wrong with you. Get outside, go look at the blue sky and the green grass and the color of flowers, and see if you can tap into a sense of awe or wonder at the miracle of nature in our world. We live in a world that produces colors, such as the green grass and the colors of the flowers. And even if that's hard, be grateful that you have 100% success rate, that you're already getting through whatever you didn't think you could. Because even though you don't like it, and even though you're struggling through it, you're getting through it. So, the first part of I want to just share is really asking yourself if you're holding off for when things go back to normal. And I think, if we consider what life was like pre 9/11 and post 9/11, it's probably the best comparison we can have. Just the other night, I was watching Sleepless in Seattle with my daughters. They're teenage girls, and so showing them some good old-fashioned rom-coms. And there was a scene at the airport, and Tom Hanks and his son were taking the woman he was dating to the airport, and they were standing with her right at the gate. And that's an experience my daughters have never even known. There is no concept of what it was like to bring somebody to the gate or pick somebody up at the gate. That's never been their worldview. But I can look at that in retrospect and say, oh my gosh, that was what life was like pre 9/11. And we're going to do the same thing now. And yet we can still see, even in those first few days or weeks or months after 9/11 occurred, it felt like, am I ever going to get on a plane again? How could I ever do that? And yet we did, because we found our resilience. We learned how to pivot in the face of the adversity that we were being challenged with. So this is life. We recognize when we get stuck in our thought patterns, and we ask ourselves, how can I pivot? How can I be resilient? How can I be with what is? Part of it is mindset, and a whole bunch of it is practice. So in that ability to want to pivot and be resilient in the face of what is, I have decided to create a program for this upcoming school year in which I am going to be guiding parents how to mindfully manage remote learning, or even if there's some variation or hybrid learning, or even if you happen to live in a place in which school is back in session, as school's going to be starting soon if it hasn't already, but yet even school's going to look different, right? So I am creating this program for parents to mindfully manage these challenges for both themselves and their kids, so they can have a peaceful home and a productive school year. Because I know for many, many, many families, everyone's working from home. And I know the challenge of when the kids are going to have to be on separate devices, and the parents are going to be, trying to find where can I have my own workspace, and how that's going to probably cause some logistical issues and stepping on toes. And certainly in my own house, I've noticed already the Wi-Fi issues when we're all on Zoom isn't as strong. So remember, as we begin this upcoming school year, to check your mindset around, am I flexible in how I can pivot anytime any of these challenges come up? Or am I getting stuck on, well, the way things used to be were like this, and so that's the way they always have to be from now on? Because I think if there's ever been a time to role model to our kids how to be resilient in the face of adversity, the time is now. But here's the problem. Parents, while they have really good intentions, have poor execution often, because their triggers often causes their patience to be low and their reactivity to be high. And so while they may want to role model this resiliency, they may not be able to actually enact it. But they might expect it from their kids, even though they're having a difficult time accessing it in themselves. And to me, these are all learnable skills. In fact, I don't think they're learnable. I think they're necessary to learn, because we are going to have to continue to find creative ways to manage in the world that we're living in today. And I am hopeful and optimistic that over time, some of the challenges will become easier, or perhaps they will just really become the new normal and we don't see them as challenges anymore. You know, it was really interesting, as a quick aside, I took my only real COVID vacation recently with my daughters. We went down to Southern California. And, you know, it was a really interesting snapshot in time in, you know, truly being out of the house and on the road and really seeing the impact in which we are living in this post-COVID world. And I could have either not gone on vacation and said, you know, there's no way I can feel safe or comfortable outside my home. Or there was a way I can say, this is a little bit uncomfortable. I'm not sure how to navigate this. Let's test out the waters while checking in constantly with my body, with my mind, with my gut to say what feels right in this moment. And I'm so grateful that we did, because I don't want to feel that I can't live my life. Now, I happen to be on the more conservative belief system of, you know, taking precautions with COVID. I'm not conservative in my political beliefs, very liberal, but conservative in my approach of safety with COVID. You know, we didn't walk out of the house without a mask on. Where I was, the numbers are pretty high, so we were a little extra cautious. And I didn't want that to stop us from experiencing life. I didn't want that to stop us from creating memories and having shared times together, because my daughter's almost 17. You know, God willing, she'll be off to college in a couple of years. And I didn't want to miss the opportunity to create experiences. So to me, this was a beautiful reminder of how to pivot and how to work with the material that we have. So I want to talk about a couple of the things that I think parents can begin to do for the upcoming school year. Now, if you check the show notes, there's a link for a webinar that I recorded where I go into depth over some of these tools. And if you want to hear more and want to see me go into more depth, then please check out the show note links. Everything will be in there. But I wanted to highlight a couple of them for you guys, because I think it is just this important to talk about and this important to share. So of the variety of beliefs that I have around how parents can role model resiliency right now, I think one of the biggest ones is to role model the behaviors you wish to see for your kids. And this is where I see parents getting the most stuck. So one of my favorite examples, my favorite analogies that I came up with a couple of years ago, and if you've been listening to the podcast in the past and you've heard me talk about some of these before, be the 911 operator. What does this mean? Well, parents get pretty triggered. Life happens, life is hard. We, have our struggle around our own emotions. And when we are feeling a little depleted, it can be hard to be patient, to be always kind in our words or our response to our kids. And yet, here's what ends up happening. When we're feeling depleted, when we're feeling stressed, when we're feeling overwhelmed, when we're feeling anxious, when we're feeling tired, when we're feeling we're not practicing self-care and there's just so much on our plate, we can tend to be pretty reactive to our kids. And what that ends up sounding like is we yell at them to calm down. And it's a bit ironic that we are yelling in such a way to get them to quiet down, but we're not role modeling that behavior. And while we might say, it's hard for me to do that, well, yeah, that's why it's hard for your kids too, because you're human. That's part of the human experience. And so the analogy that I came up with of be the 911 operator means this. Imagine you're having an emergency and you call 911. And as you call 911, you're screaming into the phone, oh my God, the house is on fire, and you're screaming or whatever the emergency is. Could you imagine if the 911 operator responded to you with the same or higher level of intensity in which you called? Oh my God, I can't believe that the house is on fire. Like whatever it was, if that 911 operator reacted to you with that high of an intensity, what do you think that would do for your emotions? What do you think that would do with your ability to solve the problem at hand? You would probably freak this shit out even more. But yet that 911 operator has been designed to stay calm. And even though you can't even see them, Their calm helps calm you down. They breathe. Even if you can't catch their breath, they are probably taking a few deep breaths. And that energy shift is enough to help you find your breath. So I want you parents, and this doesn't just go for parents, because this can be the same reactivity for partners or coworkers, family members. Be the 911 operator. If you're noticing you're triggered, you're overwhelmed, you're anxious, you're frustrated, you're impatient, you're depleted, that is a reminder that you need to practice some self-care to calm yourself down so you can actually be calm when the other people around you are anxious, frustrated, and overwhelmed and stressed. Because COVID has heightened all of our anxieties and stress. Life is a little bit harder to be living now than it's been. And so how we show up in this face of adversity, in this face of challenges, can impact how we get through it. So if you notice that you're impatient with your kids, let this vision of the 911 operator be a reminder to stay calm. Now, our breath is often the best tool we have to access the ability to enter into a calmer state. And yet when we're really triggered, sometimes that breath is hard to get to. So the advice that I like to give and the tools to share is to practice taking deep breaths outside of moments of challenge. Because if you can practice taking some deep breaths when you're not triggered, it's like doing bicep curls, right? You're strengthening the muscle. So that way, when you want to go lift something heavy, you have a stronger ability and you're able to do it with more ease. Practicing your breathing outside of moments of trigger is going to make accessing your breath a lot easier when you do need it. And I've said this before in the podcast, but I'll say it again. When I used to teach mindfulness to kids, I was at a private school for 4 years, and every week was in the different classrooms, K through 8, in which I would give different tools of mindfulness. I once went around to every single classroom and I said, if you've been breathing from the moment you're born until the moment you die, why should we practice these tools? This one little 9-year-old, she was absolutely brilliant. She said, well, I imagine we practice our breathing for the same reason we have a fire drill. She said we have a fire drill so we know what to do in case of an emergency. And I imagine we practice our breathing so we know how to use it when we need it. She literally brought me to tears. It was brilliant. And she was exactly spot on. We practice our breathing so we know how to use it when we need it. And this upcoming school year is going to provide a lot of challenges. Academic challenges, social emotional learning challenges, logistical challenges. And so now more than ever, if you ever thought your family needed some better tools in how to manage stress and anxiety and overwhelm, now is the time. If you can, as a family, create rituals or practices, whether it's, before you eat a meal, taking a few deep breaths, or before bedtime, or anytime you sit down at your computer or device to do homework or schoolwork, or check your email, just to pause, take a few deep breaths, recognize how it actually makes your body feel. You get out of your head all of those ruminating thoughts. The breath will bring you back into the present. You'll be able to see a little bit clearer, because here's the impact. And this is where I'm pivoting in my work right now to really delve deeper in with this membership that I'm going to be offering to parents for the school year. Actually, it's me for a whole year, but as the school year begins. Because here's the kicker. Even if you think you all have a pretty good ability at managing stress, anxiety, and overwhelm, it actually decreases your ability to learn. So imagine for your kids, if they're role modeling your stress and anxiety, and that's how you're running around, and that's how you're reacting to daily situations, because have compassion, it's understandable right now, right? But if you are always in a state of anxiety, stress, and overwhelm, then your brain is unable to operate at its optimal levels, because anxiety, stress, and overwhelm and any other emotional triggers operate from our emotional brain, which is in the center part of our brain. And when that emotional brain is activated, it literally shuts down our executive functioning. And our executive functioning is where we have logic, reason, rationality, decision-making, clear thinking, language, communication, and learning and retaining information. So having remote or hybrid learning is going to be hard enough as it is. So don't you want your kids to be able to have at least the brain capabilities in which they're optimizing their ability to learn? Because if the home environment is stressful, it doesn't matter how well they're being taught on this remote learning, their brain won't be able to access it. So let this be a good reminder that it might be time for your family to create some practices which can help all of you guys manage emotions, regulate the emotions, so your brains can work at your optimal level. And this shows up in all different ways, right? So if you're angry, you say something you don't mean. That's because the emotional brain is fired off, executive functioning has gone down. So understand too, anytime that emotional brain has fired off, it produces a physiological response, because that trigger that's happening is activating the fight, flight, freeze part of the brain. And all of that produces a chemical response, but we feel it in our bodies. You know what those emotional triggers like feel in your body. You have tension in your chest or your shoulders. You feel a tightness. You feel a constriction in the throat. You feel like your heart is racing. You feel like you got a pit in your stomach. You feel like you can't exhale. You feel like your shoulders are up to your ears or your heart is racing. So even for your kids, while they may not have the ability to name with their language and awareness of what exactly they're feeling and how to name those emotions, let me remind you that kids are able to tell you how they feel in their body. Now, if they just say my tummy hurts, we're going to have to be a little bit of an investigator here, because they may not know what kind of tummy ache they're having. They may not know how to differentiate. Am I hungry? Do I have to go to the bathroom? Or maybe I'm nervous or anxious about something, because tummy aches for young kids can be hard to differentiate, but it's still important information to have. So a lot of parents I work with ask their kids, how are you feeling? What do you think? And their kids actually don't know the answer to that question. Not because they're being difficult or not because they're not wanting to talk to their parents. It's because they actually don't have the emotional awareness or the language to name their emotions. Again, we've got to role model it for them. So when we can prime them for having the awareness to notice when they're feeling any difficult or overwhelming emotion, to pay attention to the cues in their body, to be able to take some deep breaths to calm it down so they can have their brain at an optimal level for learning what they need to learn, right? Language, communication, decision-making all happens when that emotional brain is not activated. One of the other ways to calm down that emotional brain, as I know I've said before, but this is so worth reiterating, especially at this time, is to name what you're experiencing. Now, if you have the ability to name the emotion, because you've got the language and you've got the practice in knowing, knowing yourself in that intimate way, then to name it. Wow, I'm really feeling a lot of anxiety about this upcoming day when we have to start school year and I'm working from home and my husband's working from home and my kids are on 3 different devices in different parts of the house. When we can name it, studies show that just by simply naming it decreases our reactivity to it. So I'm all about teaching people how to respond and not react. And the naming part comes into that, because when you can name what you're experiencing, it doesn't have to be even 100% of an accurate label. Just, wow, I'm really overwhelmed right now. That's enough. And notice the tone of voice in which I say it is not a judgmental tone like, oh God, I can't handle this right now. I'm so overwhelmed. Okay, so that would be a tone of judgment versus what I just said is a tone of compassion. If you name it to yourself and your inner critic is really loud and you name that judgment, guess what's going to happen? It's going to reactivate your trigger. It's not going to deactivate it. So naming with compassion, so turning down the volume on your inner critic and turning up the volume on your self-compassionate voice. When you name it, you are then having less over-identification with that emotion or even that thought. When you name it, you are creating space between you and that emotion. You are observing it. It does not define you. And when you name it and you create that space, you are giving yourself the opportunity to consciously choose and intentionally choose a response to it. Breathing and naming it will calm down the emotional brain, prime the brain for learning, allow everyone to manage with a little bit more ease. So I say this again, and I apologize. These are things that I know I have talked about before in the podcast. And right now, at this turning point of our summer and school year, because I also know that this is the point of the summer in which most parents are like counting the days for their kids to start school. While it's always nice to have them off of school and to have, some flexible routines and no carpool or making lunches and no homework, we also are always craving to get back to structure. And right now, what does structure look like? It's not normal. So rather than react to what's not normal, to create a relationship to the new normal, this is why I think now more than ever, these tools are so important. So if you want to learn more, if you want to be able to check out the webinar or to be able to join me in this year-long community that I'm creating for parents to journey forward to a peaceful and productive school year, please check out the show notes. All the information will be there. Share it with your friends because you guys, nobody is immune from the tools that we're needing to learn right now. I mean, nobody is immune from these struggles. We are all in it together. And I think we can all get through it with greater ease and compassion and resiliency with the more tools that we practice. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. If this spoke to you, I would also really love a comment so I can hear back what you're thinking. And, always a rating or review to help boost it so more people can hear it. This isn't about, my ego needing to say, hey, good job, here's a 5-star rating. To me, this is truly being in service to say, I really want more people to gain these tools because I know now more than ever it's necessary. And I'm very humbled and proud to be able to be a guide to help people journey forward to live a life that is full and authentic and present and aware and conscious in how we take each next step. So thanks you guys so much for tuning in, and I will talk with you soon. Stay healthy and be well.
To continue your journey forward, find Jory Rose on Facebook and Instagram to become part of her growing community. You can also gain access to her meditations, books, online classes, or to sign up for an upcoming retreat. Visit her at joryrose.com. That's JOREEROSE.com.